Hi, and welcome to the presentation. My name is Colleen Heydrich, and this will be my final presentation for the Teacher Librarian as a Technology Leader. During the presentation, you will see links that are embedded that you may go and explore at the end of the presentation. I will not always show all of them, mostly as a matter of time. So let's begin. This final presentation will be a demonstration of my learning, understanding, and connections made in the course using the Know, Do, Understand model used in the current BC curriculum. The idea is to connect topics, what students will know, to connect big ideas, what they're going to understand, and the skills, strategies, and process, meaning what students will be able to do. The first role that I'm going to look at using the ISTE standards is the learner role. Educators continually improve their practice by learning from and with others and exploring proven and promising practices that leverage technology to improve student learning. I've actually added two pieces from this particular role, the learner role, that I'm going to take a look at. The first one is the TPAC lesson that I did on cyberbullying. This method or way of thinking in terms of TPAC and combining content, pedagogical knowledge, and technical knowledge was certainly something that was new to me. I had dealt with the SAMR levels before, but this was definitely new to me. It was a challenge when I began, and I actually did some work with a couple of colleagues to process some of this and talk about what this might look like. And I was actually really excited with what the result was when I came up with my lesson. So combining some of the basic content, like what is cyberbullying, talking about vocabulary like bystanders and upstanders. What is empathy? What does bravery look like? Talking about problem solving for kids, not just what do you do in the situation, but what are the many possibilities of what you can do involving problem solving. And then look at the pedagogical aspect. So how do we teach this? Well, you can have discussion in small groups as a class. You can do some brainstorming. You could use pictures to do a walkabout. What's happening in this situation? What do you think kids should do? This could also be a way of dealing with new vocabulary. And then at the end, of course, maybe doing some reflection. Part of the process could have been reading or discussion. And then applying that technological aspect to this as well. How can we introduce technology in a meaningful and powerful way? So introducing the lesson with a video, looking at a situation maybe. Having students create and share their own videos and PSAs. I think this can be very powerful to students teaching students and learning from each other. And then possibly even using these for some kind of school competition or some kind of school-wide share. Well, this was a difficult lesson for me at the beginning, was really happy with how it came together. And it not only brought some of my thinking processes together, but allowed me to work with some other colleagues in processing some of that information as well. I actually look forward to going back and spending a little bit more time looking at other people's lessons. I did look at some, but I think there's a lot of value in going back and looking at what other teachers have done as well. The second item I chose was my TPAC and SAMR brainstorm. So how do you sort of bring these things together? As mentioned, I had dealt with SAMR before, but I had not dealt with the TPAC model. So the idea of bringing these two things together in a meaningful way was important. And I think this is the kind of assignment that could actually even be shared with other staff once you're actually in your library, to look at not only what these things are, but how can they be brought together. So on my sample here, I have my SAMR on the right side and I have my TPAC sort of on the left. But the idea of this was how to support staff. So while I'm learning, this is interestingly also part of the leadership role that TLs have as well. So how do we use technology, right? The technological aspect, the pedagogical aspect of TPAC. How does the teacher teach? What is the assessment? And then looking at the content knowledge. What does the teacher know? What does the student know? How do we combine that? When you're looking at summer, is technology being used at different levels? How is it being used? Why is it being used? How are students being supported? What kind of scaffolding is there? And then looking at the assessment piece too. But it's not just that. We need to think about core competencies, looking at big ideas. How do we collaborate on this type of work to make it meaningful? So I think there's a lot of things that can be done. One of the ways that I talked about supporting staff was actually doing some Pro D on this. I think this is something that we have skimmed over in many ways, but we don't know enough about as teachers. So I think there can be a lot of really valuable discussion that will come out of this. The next role I'm going to look at is the ISTE designer. Educators design authentic, learner-driven activities and environments that recognize and accommodate learner variability. So in thinking about the designer aspect of the ISTE standards, I have included my Library Possibilities blog post. And I'm going to start with a quote that I actually included in my post about this. It's by Marianne Williamson. The quote goes, "Think bigger, forget limits. Embrace the idea of endless possibility. It will change you." And I think that's part of the excitement about the possibilities of the library that I'm in. So in my post, I talked about the physical space. So things like the new tables that I had just ordered for creating more collaborative opportunities. I talked about lighting. I talked about having a quiet corner for reading, but also sort of a calming corner for kids who may have SEL issues that they're dealing with in the library so that they know they have a safe place as well. And that little reading corner that I talked about also connects with the mission statement that I have for the library. So there's a lot of things that come together. Now, in thinking about the actual sort of learning that's going to happen there as well, of course, reading is going to be a huge part of what happens there, and literacy in terms of reading, but also lots of different kinds of literacy. And one of the big changes is going to be there's a small room attached to the library that has been being used for LST, and it is going to be used for a new makerspace and tech room. So kids will be able to do recording in there and work with all these amazing media arts, and all the opportunities that we've been working on in this course will then be available for students. Of course, this is going to take collaboration on the part of myself and teachers working with students so that they are meeting skills that are necessary. But allowing students to have an actual space to explore and create is going to be really important. Now, the next standard that I want to talk about is the ISTE citizen. Educators inspire students to positively contribute to and responsibly participate in the digital world. So the first artifact that I'm going to use is my cyberbullying quiz. So we created a quiz that I'm actually going to use when I get back into the school. And there are 10 questions. Some of them are open. Some of them relate to sort of how many times the kids have experienced these things. And some of them I'm hoping are going to lead to more discussion. So one of the goals that I was hoping for is that students would create their own quizzes, and these might turn into creative assignments in terms of maybe a poster, maybe a podcast, sort of demonstration of the importance of this topic in very different ways. So this artifact has really contributed to my own learning too in a lot of ways, because I'm thinking about the possibilities when we're teaching kids not only to be responsible citizens, but how to provide going forward for students to explore those things in different ways. The other tool that I decided to add, or the other artifact, was the assignment that I did with Melissa Johnson, and it was the evaluating tools assessment of apps. And we each took 2 apps and really sort of dug deep with these and tried to figure out where their strengths were, where their weaknesses were. And I'll be really honest, I learned some things that I didn't know. For example, one of the apps that I chose was Edmodo, which is something a lot of the teachers in our school use, particularly the grade 7 students. And I think they're going to be surprised when I take this back to them at the beginning of the year and talk about some of the issues related to this. And there are some questions around how the information that students give them is used. And the problem is it's not clear. So I think having the discussion with staff and then possibly even having the discussion with students is really important so that they understand as teachers and educators, and the kids understand what that means as well. The other piece that I personally looked at was Kahoot, which I use a lot, and I was happy to see that most of the tools that we use for evaluation turned out fairly positively, but you still learn a lot by digging a little bit deeper. And I think that not only my assessment, but the other assessments that we did in class and are able to look at from other colleagues in our program will be very, very helpful going forward. The next role is the ISTE facilitator. Educators facilitate learning with technology to support student achievement of the ISTE standards for students. The artifact I've chosen here is STEAM in the Library, and you can link to my post. This is something that I'm quite excited about and quite passionate about. I have just started exploring this in the library that I'm in. I'm excited to use this to create some displays at the beginning of the year to get other people interested in this. This was one of my first forays in terms of collaborative work in the school I was in last year. I took a book and decided that I wanted to combine some STEAM and some literacy, and I actually planned a lesson and took it to a teacher that I thought might be open to the idea, and she was fully on board, and it went from there. As a result of that, we ended up with 3 or 4 classes, I think, in the library working on this same basic activity because other teachers were excited about what we were doing as well. So this was a brainstorm of how STEAM could be used in the library and what that could actually look like. So there are lots of opportunities, Lego clubs, maker spaces, coding, Scratch Junior. I would like this eventually to build up to something bigger. I would like this to become a STEAM fair that we do every year, where students, instead of being a science fair, students are demonstrating what they are learning. So there are so many exciting possibilities here that I'm really excited to see what this looks like going forward. The other artifact I decided to use was my 3D design. And it was partly because not only is this important in terms of facilitation, but it's important in terms of learning. My role as a learner and even in some ways as a leader as well. As you can see by the first example on the left, which is part of my blog post, I did not do very well the first time. And I really sort of decided I had to put it away and then come back to it. So the quote in the middle, sometimes what we call failure, is really just that necessary struggle called learning. I think that's really important to make sure that kids understand too that growth mindset is a really integral part of a lot of technology learning. I think students at this point often feel like they know what they're doing and that they're not going to have struggles, but we all have struggles when we're dealing with technology at different times. And the nice thing is we all tend to have struggles at different times and with different things. So the collaborative part of using technology is excellent because you can work together when you're struggling and one person will help and then the next time someone else will help. So there's a real give and take in terms of working with technology. But as you can see, I went back, I found a different kind of tutorial. The first one was written. The second tutorial was much more visual. It was a YouTube video that I found. And I was actually able to create something. I was really proud of myself because I had struggled through it, but yet I had gone back and tried and completed something, which this one example alone is something that's really important to share with kids so that they understand that we all have struggles, and being able to actually show them this I think will really help with their own learning as well. And for them to understand that, sometimes you're going to have problems, but you just have to keep moving forward. The next role is the ISTE analyst. And the description says, educators understand and use data to drive their instruction and support students in achieving their learning goals. And I particularly focused on 7A, so I added the information for that. It says, provide alternative ways for students to demonstrate competency and reflect on their learning using technology. Reflection is really important for me, and I think some of the tools that we've been working with allow students to not only show their competency with the tool, but to really reflect on their learning. The first artifact I chose for my ISTE analyst piece was my podcast. And this was a bit of an exciting adventure for me. I didn't know a lot about podcasting. I had listened to a few and hadn't really made any personal connections in terms of learning possibilities. And when I actually saw the assignment, I had no idea what to do in terms of the creation part of it. And I didn't even know what I was going to discuss in terms of a topic. So I started poking around at some podcasts and looking at possibilities for topics. So I decided to do something that would hopefully give people a little bit more information about myself, and that is something that colleagues might find interesting, and maybe even students to be able to share a little bit of my own story. Once I actually started getting into the process of this, I absolutely loved it. And I can see all kinds of opportunities for learning. I think it would be really interesting for some students to be able to use this over the process of a project, maybe an inquiry project, for example, and to be able to podcast at different points. And then at the end, to even be able to go back and listen to those podcasts and reflect on that process that they'd been through. Because I think when we actually get to the end of a process, we don't always think about what has happened during that. And this would be an amazing way for students to be able to document not only their learning and their process, but then to be able to reflect upon that too. So this is an amazing way for students to be able to actually put together their learning in a variety of different ways. There were definitely some technical aspects for me. I have a free Weebly blog and I was not able to directly upload the audio, so I had to figure out another option. So some troubleshooting was involved here, which I was able to actually share. And I ended up using Podomatic, which was very easy. And it allowed me to upload that and an image directly to my blog so that you could listen straight off my blog as well. I think there are a lot of skills in podcasting that are not super difficult, but that would be very useful to students to work through. And being able to see students explore with this would be really exciting. So I can't wait to work through this with some students and see what kind of possibilities are out there for them. The second artifact that I decided to use for my ISTE analyst piece was my video on my redesigned library. I was very happy with how this turned out. I had used PowerPoint before, but this was not something I had done before in terms of creating video with it. And I found that the end result I was so happy with that I actually sent it to the principal of the school almost right after I was finished. And she's really excited. So we are planning to get together and have some discussion about this as soon as the school year gets started. But this came together in a way that I feel as if I'm able to share this with staff, and that the redesigned aspects of our library are really able to support students and move their instruction into new directions and allow them more creativity and get them beyond the sort of consumption part of education into the production and the creating in some really different ways that they have not had the opportunity to do so before. So I'm very excited about this piece, and this might be the piece that I am happiest with of all the artifacts that I have chosen. The next piece is the ISTE collaborator. Educators dedicate time to collaborate with both colleagues and students to improve practice, discover and share resources and ideas, and solve problems. The artifact that I chose for my collaborator role was the LLC piece discussing my own library learning commons. And it's ironically one of the pieces that I probably struggled the most with in the whole course. I, for some reason, was just not quite feeling like I got it there. And I finally feel like the piece that I ended up with was something that demonstrated a lot of the learning. So it includes the ISTE standards, it includes SEMR, it includes TPAC, but yet it also shows how our LLC is able to support learning. And I decided to use the graphic instead of the chart that I had created the second time. And this is actually my third version, but it covers the elements of the LIGHT model. So literacies, information, inquiry and discovery, instructional designs, technology boosts, and expertise and leadership. And I feel like this is a really wonderful summary now of how not only can I support learning within the library, but within our school. And I think this shows some of the ways that our library can support learning, but that it doesn't always even have to be in the library. And my hope is that teachers seeing this will have questions and inquiries and how can I do this with my class? Can you help me do this? So that if I have this actually posted in a couple of places where teachers are going to be, like maybe above the photocopier or maybe in the staff room near the microwave where people have to stand around, that this will end up creating some discussion and really get some people to come and talk to me about ways that we can collaborate and explore learning for their students. The ISTE leader is the next role I'm going to discuss. Educators seek out opportunities for leadership to support student empowerment and success and to improve teaching and learning. So the first piece that I have chosen is actually a piece that we did way back at the beginning, but I feel as if this piece really does help to focus on some of the leadership roles that I am going to be taking on. And I feel as if this is one of the very important roles for me. I feel like this is sort of the culmination. And if people can see me as a leader within the school, not just within the library, that's just going to generate a bigger role for the LLC. And it's going to mean that hopefully more people will want to collaborate as well. So in this piece, I started with some learning goals. So the ISTE teacher standards will be the basis for short term, a 6-month goal setting for my teaching, practice, and collaborative work in dealing with the following topics. And then I've gone through and set specific goals with SEMR, TPAC, the ADST, with my PLN, my focused PLN. And I think these goals are ways that I am demonstrating that I'm moving myself forward in my leadership role. And these may change. I may not meet them all, but I think that's all part of creating a professional plan and being a leader within the school. The other piece I chose was my blog itself. I think my blog demonstrates some key things about me. It demonstrates some key things about my learning, my willingness to persevere when things are not always easy. And it most certainly demonstrates my role as a lifelong learner. And that's one of the things that I think is the most important. I want to be able to demonstrate to students and my colleagues that learning is not something that happens within the four walls of a classroom between 9 and 3. It is something that happens in so many different ways and so many different places, and that there's so many opportunities now that we want to be able to take advantage of all of these opportunities. And I'm hoping that my role within the school will create some different opportunities and some new ways of looking at things, both for my colleagues and for their students. And I'm really excited about the opportunities and what will happen going forward with my LLC. The last thing I just want to quickly touch on that we haven't talked a lot about in class, largely just opportunity in terms of time, but I think for my colleagues, it's also going to be very important to really stay focused on the ISTE standards for students. Um, these roles as empowered learners, digital citizens, knowledge constructors, innovative designers, computational thinkers, creative communicators, and global collaborators are really essential to their learning and what they're going to be doing moving forward. The skills that they are going to need for jobs that are going to exist when they are ready to get jobs are things that we can't possibly imagine at this point. So we really need to be teaching them skills and preparing them to think differently so that they're actually ready for what might be ahead of them, because they don't know and we don't know either. So I think making sure that these goals are really right in front of us on a regular basis are really important. Lastly, I just want to say thank you. Appreciation goes out to the many colleagues in the course that helped me along the way. I'm not sure sometimes, technology-wise, if I would have gotten through without some of you. The collaboration in the course has been absolutely amazing, and I'm very grateful. And the last thing is gratitude to my family, my husband George and my boys Kyle and Nathan for putting up with all the crazy homework hours this summer. It's all been worth it though, and I'm very happy to have been able to complete this course. Thank you.